I tell my clients therapy is like dating. If you don't like me, that's fine, dump me. But tell me you're going to dump me, don't ghost me. And I will find you someone that I think will work with your personality and will work with the issues that you're having. I was like, this is the most nerve-wracking EMDR session I've ever been in my life, because I have a 22-pound cat that was sitting on the floor looking at the light bar, and you could see his little butt wiggling, and he was like, I'm ready to go.
You're listening to the Therapist to Millions podcast, where we get under the skin and into the brains of the world's leading therapists with Dr. Susan Spicer and myself, Damien Mark Smith, as we delve into the world of all kinds of effective therapies with fascinating and challenging cases, plus marketing tips and what's really working in mental health right now. Hello and welcome to the Therapist to Millions podcast, where we get under the skin and into the brains of therapists around the world. And today, all the way from the US of A, we're not going to mention the time zone changes. We have a counselor in Ohio, Cassie Eaton, who offers trauma-informed post-traumatic stress therapy, EMDR, and counseling. Now, Cassie, this is going to be a really interesting one, because Cassie published a prose poetry book in her early 20s called Amitriptyline Queen under a different name, a pen name, Jaden Christopher, detailing her personal struggles with mental health and the mental health system. And it was a document of her own journey from through trauma, from the client's chair to the therapist chair. So Cassie teaches her clients to live a happy, healthy life while remaining in their window of affective tolerance. I love that. Plus, she adds a Taoist approach by teaching an understanding of qi and how to balance internal and external energies. And she looks amazing. Cassie, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it.
So give us a little bit of a background. Obviously, your journey is incredible. I mean, it sounds like, we can spend the whole time on this one. Give us a little bit of a background. How did you go from being in therapy to ending up as a therapist? Tell us all about it.
Well, honestly, I wasn't in therapy much is how I ended up as a therapist.
Yeah.
I was very disenchanted by going to therapists and getting the yeah, okay response to anything and everything I said. So as I was working through my own trauma, and I did a lot of that independently, I realized that's not the kind of therapist I wanted to be. I wanted to be somebody that I could allow my clients to feel, that I could feel what they were feeling. So really, when you incorporate some of that energy balancing into the sessions and into the concept of holding space for someone, that's what I wanted to be able to give my clients, because that's what I needed as a client in my early 20s. I needed somebody that I could feel like they were with me in my trauma. They were holding that space for my trauma, and they were very actively listening. And, our definition of actively listening in therapy is oftentimes, well, just don't react. Just let them say what they need to say and don't react to it. But some clients need that reaction. They need to be heard and genuinely and empathetically heard. In my early 20s, well, actually, it started about 17 years old. I started to experience some very significant depression. It kind of came out of nowhere. It came with maybe a few situational life changes regarding my parents, but really the extensiveness of this depression was very uneven to the situational changes that were occurring in my life. So they started me on antidepressants, very little evaluation prior to just tossing me on some antidepressants. And I found that to be very problematic because by the age of 18, my freshman year in college, the antidepressants threw my bipolar disorder and I had total nervous breakdown. They made me so manic because I was not also being treated with a mood stabilizer. So you're literally just hitting the gas on this really bad bipolar depression without even really evaluating and realizing that it's bipolar depression.
Mm.
This is a sad teenager, so we're just going to medicate her and see how she does. She didn't do well. So I did not do well. And I would say from the years of 18 to about 2020, I went through multiple medication trials trying to find something that was actually going to help. I went through multiple therapists. I went through multiple doctors. The book is actually entitled Amitriptyline Queen because I was so manic by the time I got to one of my first actual psychiatrists that they had dosed me up on about 80 milligrams of amitriptyline a day, which I don't know if anybody's aware of this, but it's a tricyclic old school antidepressant, very heavily sedating. So I was just walking through life, bumping into walls, trying not to respond or react. Unfortunately, if I had a therapist that had been able to look at this through a trauma perspective, they would have realized that I was just constantly being triggered into fight and flight,
Mhm.
and then alternatively being triggered into freeze and fawn responses. So I had a life of complex trauma up until the age of 18 when I had my nervous breakdown at 18. Um, there was a huge trauma that had occurred in my life. Um, and I was just reacting one or the other. I was totally outside of my window of effective tolerance on a regular basis. You can't really effectively treat that with medications. So what I needed was someone to have heard me and to have sat with me in those spaces and co-regulated with me and allowed me to reach my window of effective tolerance.
Mm.
And then when you look at that stuff, you're looking at a lot of polyvagal theory and things like that. However, when you look at polyvagal theory in the trauma realm, you're really just looking at yin and yang and balancing your chi and things that have been around since, the dawn of time in Eastern civilizations. So
Well, that certainly explains, your use of EMDR. But tell us a little bit about the Taoist and the Qi. Where does that come from, and how do you incorporate that?
So it is so strange, but my mom, who like raised this very Italian Catholic woman, when I was about 8 years old, 7 or 8 years old, she started getting into Eastern philosophy, Eastern medicine. She started up in a martial arts group, and just tagging along with her. So by the time I was in third grade, I actually did Tai Chi at my talent show. Now, so odd
Love it.
selection, right?
Yeah.
But I got up on stage in front of all these people and I did a Tai Chi example presentation for my third grade talent show. And, we're talking like 1991. Nobody knew what the heck I was doing.
Wow.
Um, and so, they loved it. They were like, that was really cool to watch. And like, you're like, so calm and so collected and you're doing this and you're like 10, you know, and it was a great experience. And so I pulled away a little bit from that. But then when I was 15, my mom actually took us with a group of people on a kind of like a pilgrimage, little Buddhist pilgrimage, feng shui pilgrimage through China. So we spent 21 days in China when I was 15 years old, and we got to go to all of the temples and meet a lot of Taoist masters and things like that. And it was quite an amazing experience.
Nice.
As I started to get sick, I started pulling away from that more. But when I got my, head together and my space together, I realized all these things that my mom had been instilling in me from, 10 to till today, she still does. Um, they were so applicable to therapy. And then when all of this research on polyvagal theory started coming out, I looked at it and that was what I was relating it to in my head. It was what I was seeing it as. I was like, they're trying to get you into this window of effective tolerance. They're trying to get you to co-regulate. They're trying to get you to self-regulate. And really what you're looking at is, am I too yin? Am I too yang? Am I balanced? Is my energy significantly and effectively distributed throughout my body? And am I going with the flow of how things should be? Or am I trying to control and prevent and make things happen to prevent crisis and prevent trauma and prevent all these terrible things? Or am I just going with the flow? And in Taoism culture, they look at Wu Wei, which is kind of to go with the flow of nature and to be one with
Mhm.
the things around you. And so I find that instead of rambling on about polyvagal theory to my clients, that when I give them this kind of more Eastern perspective on things, they can understand it and they can actually more quickly feel it, which is more important.
Nice.
Takes a long time to get someone to use calming strategies and to understand that they are effective. But when you talk about with your clients, where do you feel that in your body? Which is also something that they that rolls with the EMDR practices, is where do you feel that disturbance and that stress in your body? How can we balance it out? How can we get it evenly distributed, get rid of the negative energy and bring in more positive energy and more neutral energy?
I love it. Now, I did Tai Chi for years, and there's actually a couple of fantastic little exercises you can do, Qigongs, which you can create a Qi ball. You can actually create an energy ball, and you can do stuff with it. And people feel it. They actually feel the energy ball.
Yes.
Wow, that's so cool. And it's experiential. It's really good.
So when I ask my clients, are you feeling an energy? Are you feeling that chi, that energy ball? Are you feeling that sitting somewhere in your body? Then my job is it dorsal vagal? Is it up the top? Are you having a fight flight response? Is that energy all up here, or is it lower? Is it in your stomach? And then what moves can we do in the therapy practice? What moves can you do on your own to move that around and make it more evenly distributed within your body?
Nice. I love it. It's so cool. Okay. Now, using some hypotheticals and no identifying factors, give us some examples of success stories, some maybe challenging cases, and maybe an unusual or fascinating, interesting one as well.
So I don't ever talk about the clients that I see because of the line of work that I do. So even in hypotheticals, but I will tell you this, the most amazing success story I've had is myself. And so that's kind of what I wanted to talk a little bit about. When I first entered therapy in 2001, I know that we don't use this global assessment of functioning score anymore, but I had a global assessment of functioning score of, I think it was 25. At 35 and lower, you're usually in a group home. I was staring at walls. I was not moving, and I was practically catatonic at one point. And I don't know, I can't assess my own global assessment of functioning score now, but it's pretty up there. I mean, it's not 100. Nobody's 100, but it's maybe in the 80s. And I think the fact that like I was able to experiment with so many different types of therapy for myself and really work through the process on my own, which is not really something I recommend for people, but finding a therapist that fits you is so incredibly important. And unfortunately, people don't realize that if you don't mesh and you don't feel comfortable with your therapist, it's not going to be effective therapy. I don't care who they are. If you don't feel like you can relate to them and you're in that co-regulation state with them, it's not going to be effective therapy. I tell my clients therapy is like dating. If you don't like me, that's fine, dump me, but tell me you're going to dump me, don't ghost me, and I will find you someone that I think will work with your personality and will work with the issues that you're having. It's very important that you kind of look around and shop around with therapists, and I know that sounds like quite a luxury, but it's important. And when you think about like with my global assessment of functioning score raising so much, it was because I could never find somebody that I really felt like I meshed with. But I meshed with myself. And so if I sat with myself and I was able to look at things, I was able to gain a better understanding and gain a tremendous amount of insight. And I will get into that when you go into a couple more of your questions, but reading is incredibly important for growing your insight. Listening to music is incredibly important for gaining insight into yourself. When you can relate and resonate with someone else's words and how they've put your emotions on a page, or they've put your emotions in a song, it allows you to say, oh, wow, yeah, that's what I'm feeling. That's what I'm going through. And then you can stop and you can say, now, where's that coming from?
Love it. Now,
that's what I did.
This is an incredible segue as well. Now, the reason I'm saying that is because last week's podcast, we had someone on and we were talking about book writing. And Dr. Susan and I, we're quite happy to test things out and try things out. Obviously, Therapists to Millions is pretty new. The podcast is pretty new. But we ask our therapists when they join our starter membership what they would like to achieve most by joining the membership. And the number one bit of feedback was, I'd love to write a book. If you haven't already written a book, I'd love to write a book, or I'm writing a book, I'm researching a book. So we thought, great, let's create a book writing challenge. We put it out there, and we heard crickets. We literally we had one person interested. So we went out and we asked. We said, well, hold on a minute. You said you wanted to write a book. What's going on? And we ended up finding this elephant in the room. And it was, I'm burned out. I'm overwhelmed. I've got no time. I haven't got the bandwidth to do it. And this is why that's a lovely segue, because we then put a post out on Facebook. We asked people, how do therapists take care of themselves? It's now an extra question we even put in this podcast. And we even recorded a webinar last week where it's a 30-minute free webinar. Anyone listening to this, to just go to Therapist to Millions. It's on there. You can sign up. You can see it. Talking about self-care. Do you have a therapist? Do you have someone to talk to? What do you do to spend the time in nature? Do you listen to music? Do you look after yourself? Do you get sleep? All of those things? We talk about those. Do you have a VA? Sometimes for some people, it's the admin stuff on the end of the day that causes the issues. So that's a brilliant segue. So thank you for bringing that up. And we will put the links to this in the show notes. And as a result of that, by the way, this is going out tomorrow instead of 2 weeks when it was supposed to be going out. So that's a beautiful segue. Thank you for that, Cassie. We'll talk about books in a minute. Now let's on to this one. So what do you do now, as well as, some of the things you mentioned? What are those things that you do to make sure that you do take care of yourself first?
Well, I've recently switched my practice from in person to predominantly virtual therapy. And that was one of the big things for me in finding that work-life home balance. And what I do for self-care is I'm almost embarrassed to admit this, but I have a pool in my backyard, which I live in Ohio, so you only get about 3 to 4 good months of it. So in those 3 to 4 good months of having my pool, if I have a cancellation, like I sit there going, oh, cancel, because my ass is going in that pool. I want to get in that pool for 20 minutes in my floaty, and I blare like 90s R&B music as loud as I possibly can. And I don't have neighbors, which is lovely. And so I get in that pool, I put my glitter floaty on, I listen to my 90s R&B, I do a little shoop, and I just decompress completely. Another music is a huge thing for me as far as self-care goes. So when I wake up in the morning, my alarm goes off, and it is the Circle of Life from The Lion King.
Nice.
So you immediately hear that, like, just that that's my, like, what do they call it these days, a hype song. So that goes off, and I am just my whole stress level goes down, and my whole excitement and joy for the day level goes up. I use music a ton to switch my moods. And so if I'm feeling burned out, if I'm feeling tired, I will start with a song that is something that I can relate to, something that's like, oh, life is terrible and I'm so burned out and I'm so tired. And then I find a transition song, and then I get into a hype song. So I really kind of work to build that, and it really helps with that burnout so much. My pool is by far my favorite opportunity. I act surprisingly, I enjoy exercise sometimes, not on a regular basis by any means, but we have elliptical in the basement. If I get on that, I can really go with some good music and get some stress out that way.
Love it. I love it. Fantastic. So let's talk about marketing. So what's been your most successful marketing technique to grow your practice? Word
of mouth. Which is strange. I live in a very, very small rural community. I was advertising on Psychology Today, which it's a wonderful place to advertise in order to get clients. I really, really am a strong advocate for that therapist finder they have on there, because it is like a little therapist, like Tinder. You can just look through all your pictures and what are they into, what do they teach, what do they do in their practice, what insurance do they take, and then click a button to get a referral. However, I was finding with Psychology Today, I was getting 8 and 10 referrals a week that I couldn't keep up with. Wow. So I'm a solo practitioner. So I've actually taken down all my marketing. I have a website, but it's mainly used for my clients to access their client portals. So already established clients. But word of mouth in my area is a big thing. I still get 2 or 3 referrals a week. Just, hey, my friend said she saw you 2 years ago. Can I get in to see you?
Love it.
So it's your quality of the care you give is the biggest marketing tool you can have.
Ah, that's brilliant. That's gold dust. Thank you so much for that. Okay, so let's talk about books now. So if you could write another book, or if you are thinking of writing another book, what would what would the title be?
I have no idea. I could write a million books. I would love to write a book called Your Scars Will Heal, and another book about a journey from trauma to thriving to post-traumatic growth. I'm huge on post-traumatic growth. So
Can you write one about glitter? Put something about glitter in there.
glitter, yes.
For anyone listening on Audible or Spotify, you gotta check out the YouTube video because Cassie's background is just so colorful and it's so cool. Last time she came on, we had to rearrange this, but last time she came on, I said, "Oh, make sure you keep the same background because we love that." That's so brilliant, fantastic. On the subject of books, so what's the best therapy book you've ever read and why? And also your favorite non-therapy book as well.
So it's kind of a combo. My favorite non-therapy book and the book that literally changed my life was Prozac Nation by Elizabeth Wurtzel. Prozac Nation was a book that I read in the very start of my illness, and it was something that I read and was like, holy crap, I am not going through this by myself. What I'm going through is a thing. It exists. Other people are going through this, and they're having just as much trouble with treatment as I am. And they're having just as many pulls to like seek out some of those reward things and those negative coping skills as I am, and the impulsivity and all the things she talks about. But the way she speaks in that book about her journey and that just pure raw emotion. Elizabeth Wurtzel was my therapist in my 20s.
Wow.
She was reading Prozac Nation, reading her. She had a follow-up book more again later, reading Bitch. She wrote a book about strong women and feminist women icons and things like that. Reading her books in my 20s was just my therapy. It was how I got through it.
Do you think she ever did? And she never did therapy herself, though. I mean, she never was a therapist.
Oh no, I'm sure I know she was never a therapist. She was always a writer. She was a poet. She was a writer. She was a music writer. She wrote a lot regarding music. But all of her books, aside from Bitch, were mental health
Yeah.
oriented.
When you said she was my therapist, I just thought she was. Like, oh, that'd be
No,
so
not
cool.
no. She was like my personal, like, man, I could just read those books and really just feel that sense of she's hearing me. She's hearing everything inside my head. Like when you hear a song and it just totally resonates with you and you're like, wow, this person is in my head, And so I
Yeah.
watched what she went through and I kind of modeled some of my own treatment after it as well. Because I was like, she's just right there with me.
Reminds me of my favorite non-therapy book when I was a kid growing up, which was The Way of the Peaceful Warrior by Dan Millman. And I remember reading that book and going, wow, there's this whole like world of self-development out there I never even knew existed. And they obviously turned that into a film now with I think it's Chuck Norris or something. I can't remember who was but it's like, throughout the trash, Dan, it was like, oh, he's talking about my thoughts in my head. I never even realized I could do that. Like, that's so cool. That's brilliant. I love that one. Okay, so what is your top tip? I think I know, I think I know what this is going to be. Get on a floaty, get in the pool, put the 90s music on. That is such a good tip, by the way. What is your top tip for mental health in the world today?
You are so close. My top tip for mental health in the world today is get in touch with the things that you absolutely love doing and that brought you joy as a child and try to work those into your adult life.
Oh, I love that.
So I loved floaties and swimming when I was a kid. I loved going into Lake Erie and just getting, covered in dirt and disgustingness, but sitting in the water and enjoying it. And I do that now. I was a huge fan of Barbies until I was like way past the age I should have been a fan of Barbies. But I love dressing them up and making them just wear whatever they wanted to wear and be whatever they wanted to be. And so I have probably 4 closets in my house. No one else in my house gets a closet, but I have about 4. That is just a giant collection of Shein clothes, basically. But like just, unique things. And I never needed to look like a Barbie, but I always wanted to dress like one. So finding those little things we did as kids that just brought us joy, and getting in touch with that inner child state, and doing them in adults and allowing them to manifest in our adult lives. Finding joy is just priceless.
That's brilliant. I love that one. Okay, now it's competition time. So here we go. You want to win one of these? Tell us a fact that blows our mind, or tell us a joke that's one of a kind to win an exclusive. And they are exclusive, by the way. There's not many of them made. Therapist to Millions t-shirt. We only ask that you take a picture of yourself when we send it to you, just so we can add it to our gallery. But which is it going to be? Fact or joke?
I am going to tell you a joke.
Yes.
I am not funny. I am not good at jokes, but I'm going to tell you the funniest little EMDR fact in the entire world. Do you see this thing? This is an EMDR light bar.
Okay.
Back here. Okay. So this provides bilateral stimulation to my clients. It's not on right now. There's a light that bounces from side to side on the bar.
Yeah.
Yep. That light, sometimes I use it and it's red. And the other day I used it and it was red. And my cat was in my office. And this is not a laser pointer by any means, but that cat was ready to pounce in the middle of like a trauma reprocessing session. And I was like, this is the most nerve-wracking EMDR session I've ever been in my life, because I have a 22-pound cat that was sitting on the floor looking at the light bar, and you could see his little butt wiggling, and he was like, I'm ready to go. And and I'm off camera during this, and they're watching the light bar, and I'm like pausing the light movement. Take a breath. What are you noticing? And as I'm doing that, I'm grabbing the cat, throwing him out the office to get my own chi re-regulated, because I was so stressed out. So that's my kind of funny joke, is the EMDR light bars can easily be mistaken by your feline friends as a laser pointer. And it can cause many, many problems.
Oh, you definitely get a t-shirt for that. That is absolutely brilliant. I love that. I'm just imagining that scenario. That is so cool. That's brilliant. Cassie, you've been an absolute pleasure. Listen, how can people get a hold of you or contact you?
So I can be reached. It's the USA, so 1-440-941-5722. They can reach me via phone or via text. And I can be emailed at CEATONLPCC@gmail.com.
Fantastic. We're going to put those details in the show notes. And just, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to share some amazing facts with us, and also about your own journey as well. We'll also put a link to your book. Is it still available, the book?
It is. The second book, the book that I featured in by Lee, edited by Lee Gutkind through Creative Nonfiction the same time next week. Indistinguishable Chairs is the piece that I wrote for that book. That one's definitely available. Amitriptyline Queen probably is. I'm not sure. That it's just more of a bunch of ramblings from my brain at age 20. So I don't advertise it as much.
Wonderful. And we'll also put a link to your favorite author as well. So thank you so much for taking the time with us today. Really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you so much, sir, for having me. I just completely appreciate it. And I'm so excited for what you're doing here with this podcast, and getting a chance to see what does make therapists tick. And it's a really great opportunity for people to get out there and talk about their work.
Wonderful. Thanks very much.
If you enjoyed this week's episode of the Therapist to Millions podcast, may we invite you to check out our free for life Therapist to Millions online membership course for therapists and coaches who want to grow their business without trading more time for dollars. We've created the world's premier digital marketing resource exclusively for therapists, and it's yours for free for life. Just head over to therapisttomillions.com and sign up now.